Hey everyone, welcome to episode 92 of the Twim Show. This is your host Sajid Islam, and today I'll be going over the notable news and updates in the digital marketing space from the week of January 17, 2022. So today, first off, we're going to start with Google Ads. Google Ads has not released any new feature. It's just that they revamped an existing feature, which is the experiments page. Now, if you run Google Ads and if you haven't heard of the experiments page, then you should definitely take a look at it. This is a very helpful tool within Google Ads. What this experiments page does is that it helps you to answer these questions. Say, what if I ran my campaigns as, say, automated bidding versus the manual bidding I'm doing right now? Would I see a different result? So what you would do is you'd carve out experiments, and then obviously you would devise an experiment, and then you would assign a dollar amount. So say you would say 80% of my budget will run on the current algorithm, which is manual bidding, and then I want to divert 20% of my budget towards this experiment, which is automated bidding, and I want to see the results. And when you do that, you can see and you can decide if this if this experiment was successful or not, and then you would be able to say, okay, fine, this was successful, let me copy it over. So then where the new feature comes in is now with one click, you'd be able to copy over the experiment campaign into your active campaign, right? Without having to redo everything. In the past, it was a very manual work. So Google has just made it easier. Now, I went into great details to cover this only because I want you to use experiments. If you're working with an advertiser, Google Ads advertiser, or Google Ads marketing person, you want to definitely ask them if they use experiments, if so, when. And if the person says they have not heard of experiments and cannot explain to you what it is, that's probably the advertiser marketeer you should not be working with. Okay, so that's the key takeaway for this update. With that, let's move on to the next update. The next update is Google Search Console now includes desktop page experience score. Now, this is something we have covered in the past quite a bit in the last year. What this is all about is, first, Google rolled out mobile page experiments. We covered it in the past Twim Show. And now Google is rolling out desktop page experiment score. And what this basically allows, this score, it shows you is it measures or calculates the score from three different areas. One is what they call it LCP, last content display, FID, first input time, the time it takes to input a form or a field or a keystroke into any of the form, and cumulative layout score, right? Like how good is your layout for search engine. Do you really should worry about these three scores? Absolutely, because this is going to affect your SEO. And if your score is really poor, then obviously you're not going to show up on SEO. And if it's good, obviously Google is going to show it. By the way, I think FID I made a mistake. FID is your first input delay. How long does it take for the page to render so that you can enter the first keystroke? Anyway, they also look at other aspects such as HTTPS security, like do you have SSL turned on, HTTPS, and things like that. Do you have pop-ups, too many pop-ups? Obviously, that's going to count against you. Pop-ups such as, a warning, hey, we are collecting cookies. Those are permissible. Google doesn't count that against you because that's required by law. And that's something we have again covered in the past, Twim shows. And this is one of the reasons you want to listen to our podcast on a regular basis, because we keep bringing you the things you should know to help you get traction in marketing. Anyway, coming back to this topic, so this is all you need to know. If you are not keeping an eye on the score, or if you're not using Google Search Console, this is a good time to use it, because the Google is going to start rolling out, start using page experience score on desktop starting, I think, sometime in February. They haven't given an exact date, and then they're going to end it out in end of March. So you do have some bit of a time, but get ahead of the ball and get things moving. Talking about SEO, there is one new development, which is Yoast. Yoast is basically SEO provider. They allow you, and they've primarily been in the WordPress space, where they've allowed you to kind of, when you create a blog or a page, you have a Yoast plugin, and it will tell you how good your scores are in terms of SEO point of view. Again, is this something you can do without a Yoast? Absolutely. Yoast just makes it easy, right? There are like, hints and forms and things that guides you and do it. So Yoast is now coming up with an app for people on Shopify. Yay. Again, this is something happening because if you've been following our podcast, you know how Google has partnered with Shopify, Bing has partnered with Shopify. They're taking your product page on Shopify into different search engine, and Yoast is just basically adding more stuff, adding a capability into that whole offering. Is that now when you have a Shopify page, you can add the Yoast app on Shopify, which is about $30 a month, and it will tell you how good your page is from an SEO standpoint. Now, is Yoast 100% accurate? Absolutely no. And why that is because Yoast is not Google, right? Yoast does what it thinks is what Google knows. Again, Google does publish a fair amount of information, and you're going to see that one of those information today towards the end of this show. But what I want to tell you is Yoast is not like shooting in the dark. They've been in the business for a while. They've gathered some good practices, and they says, this is what a page should have. These are the tags it should have. This is what you need to have, and these are the attributes you need to have. This is what you need to do. So it guides you and helps you. All those things that you'd probably not be able to get it done right out of the gate if you didn't have hire an SEO person. So with that, that's all about Yoast. So if you're on Shopify, or if you know someone on Shopify, make sure you tell them, hey, Yoast, there is an app called Yoast that they can add on and help them surface on Google organically. Now, at some point, there's only so many pages can show up on the first page, but that's a discussion for another day. With that, let's move on to the next update, which is a great actually question. Google's John Mueller actually explained why SEO or site migrations are hard. Now, what do I mean by that? Say, we rank very highly for Google Ads experts, and our site is marketandgrow.com. Tomorrow, we decided, hey, we're going to change our site to, say, from marketandgrow.com to, say, xyzdigital.com. And if we change it, obviously, we are going to lose our site ranking. Right? Or you would think we should not lose it because it's the same site. We are moving from marketandgrow.com to xyzdigital.com. Why should we lose our search? Because we have already been ranked and we are already in first page of Google. Well, Google's John Mueller says that's not as easy as you think it is, because obviously they have indexes, and each indexes that needs to be updated. So it takes time, and sometimes it takes months to up to a year. John Mueller does go into in-depth and says, we have a site migration guide. By the way, this link is in the show notes page, so you definitely want to check it out. He says there is a site guide, migration guide documentation. You should check it out. But at a high level, he says there are 4 things you should monitor. One is, first of all, do your research, right? Take account of all the old URLs and what the newer URLs are going to be. Implement migrations. Probably you have to do some 301 redirects. You have to do internal redirects, internal updates, and then monitor the migration, make sure everything is done. And then keep checking the Google Search Console and see that this is done. But overall, the reason I'm covering is because a lot of people do migrate websites, migrate domains, and they may be affected by this. And this is something I learned, something new. All the in details stuff, like there is a site migration guide documentation that and this has been there since 2014. So it's an 8-year-old documentation, and Google's John Mueller says that we are updating it. Okay. So now you know how to do a proper site migration. And obviously, if you are doing it or you know someone doing it, refer them back to this episode of the podcast, to this update, and then they can click the link and follow through go down the rabbit hole. With that, the last update for this week is Google has released a new tag for the robots. Again, robots are basically the crawlers that come to your website in the middle of the night or sometime during the day and reads your page and indexes your page. So the new tag is called indexifembedded, right? So what this robots tag, this is for you to use when you have embedded content on your page and you want Google to either index it or don't want to index it. So because Now you can say, Sajid, why would I do an embed tags? I mean, there are multiple reasons. Like, for example, we take the Twim Show podcast and we embed this podcast into our website, right? It's an index. And so we could use a tag like indexifembedded and say yes. So that way the crawler knows, hey, we want this, the page within a page to be indexed, or we could say, no, sense, don't index it, leave it separate. So it's totally giving you flexibility. And I see a lot of websites these days do embed a page within a page through the use of iframe. Or they do that, like, for example, if I want to put a book a time link into our page, and instead of having that user go from our website to a third-party website, say Calendly, right? We could embed the page within that page, book now page, and we probably say, hey, you don't need to index this page, or maybe you do want to index this page. It's up to you. Like, maybe you have a LinkedIn article that you want to embed into your page, right? So there are multiple reasons why you may want to do it or you don't want to do it, but that option is up to you to control right now without deciding whether this will get indexed or not. Okay, folks? So that's it for this week, folks. Now, if you find value in this podcast, or if you think this was helpful, do me a favor, give us a like, thumbs up, share it with your friends. I definitely could use your help in getting this podcast to other people, bringing in more listeners. Again, I appreciate you listening. I know your time is valuable. With that, I'm signing off for this week. Until next week, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in this week. It was a pleasure to serve you all. Hit the subscribe button so that you remember to sign on next week. Same place, same time for another round of This Week in Marketing.